I'm Brooke Sanders, 27, and until last year, I thought nothing could break the bond with my sister Harper. Then she met Julian Pierce, and his wealthy family changed everything. That fancy dinner at their mansion should have been my first clue. The way Diana Pierce examined my outfit like it was contaminated. How Gregory Pierce dismissed my cybersecurity career with a condescending smile. But nothing prepared me for my dad's call. Don't come to Harper's wedding. Julian's parents don't like you. Little did they know who they were messing with. Before I tell you how I brought a multi-million-dollar empire to its knees with a few keystrokes, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to stay until the end of this one. Growing up in our middle-class Boston suburb, Harper and I were inseparable. Just 3 years apart, we shared everything: clothes, secrets, dreams. Our small 3-bedroom house wasn't fancy, but it was filled with love. Mom worked as a nurse while Dad managed a local hardware store. We weren't rich, but we had what mattered. Everything changed when Mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. I was 15, Harper just 12. For 2 years, we watched our vibrant mother fade away, hospital visits becoming our new normal. I still remember holding Harper as she sobbed at the funeral, promising her that I'd always be there. That promise became my life's mission. You have to be strong for your sister, Dad told me that night. She looks up to you. After Mom died, Dad retreated into himself, working longer hours to cover the medical bills that had piled up. I stepped up, becoming more parent than sister to Harper. I packed her lunches, helped with homework, attended her school events. While other teenagers were partying, I was making sure Harper had everything she needed. My own path wasn't conventional. I skipped college, discovering a natural talent for computer systems when I got a job at a local tech shop at 18. The owner, Frank, became my mentor, teaching me coding and network security in the back room after hours. By 20, I was freelancing for small businesses, building a reputation for finding vulnerabilities others missed. You have a gift, Brooke, Frank told me. You see patterns most people miss. Meanwhile, I made sure Harper stayed on track. When she got accepted to Boston University's pre-law program, I was ecstatic. I worked 3 jobs to help with her tuition, determined she would have the education I never had. Those years were exhausting but worth it to see her thrive. Harper graduated with honors and got into a prestigious law school. That's where she met Julian Pierce during her 2nd year. The son of tech entrepreneur Gregory Pierce, Julian came from money, old money, the kind that doesn't just buy things, but buys influence. From the first time she mentioned him, something in Harper changed. You wouldn't believe his family's house, Brooke, she gushed during one of our weekly dinners. It's like something out of a movie. As Harper and Julian grew closer, our dinners became less frequent. Her texts shortened, calls went unanswered. When we did meet, all she talked about was Julian, his family, their connections. The sister who once shared everything with me now seemed to measure her words, editing her stories for someone who grew up shopping at thrift stores. You should see their summer house in the Hamptons, she'd say, then look at me awkwardly, realizing I couldn't relate. The first time I met Julian, at a restaurant too expensive for my budget, he seemed nice enough, handsome, well-mannered, with an easy charm that felt practiced. He asked about my work, nodding politely when I explained cybersecurity, though his eyes glazed over. It wasn't until dessert that he mentioned his family owned Pierce Technologies. Pierce Technologies? I nearly choked on my coffee. Your family owns Pierce Tech? Julian nodded casually, as if everyone's family owned a Fortune 500 company. That's interesting, I managed to say. What I didn't tell him was that Pierce Technologies was a client of RST Security, the firm I'd recently joined as a security specialist. I'd never worked directly on their account, but I knew they were one of our biggest clients. The connection felt strange, like worlds colliding that weren't meant to. 6 months later, Julian proposed. Harper called me, screaming with excitement. flashing a diamond ring on video chat that probably cost more than my annual salary. I was happy for her, truly. But when she said we were all invited to dinner at the Pierce estate to celebrate, a knot formed in my stomach. The Pierce mansion was exactly what you'd expect: gated entrance, manicured lawns, a driveway longer than our childhood street. Dad and I arrived together, him fidgeting with his tie, me wishing I'd spent more on the dress I'd bought specially for the occasion. Gregory Pierce greeted us with firm handshakes and practiced smiles, while Diana Pierce air-kissed our cheeks, her perfume expensive and overwhelming. The dinner that followed was an exercise in subtle humiliation. "So, Robert," Gregory addressed my father, swirling his wine, "Harper tells us you run a hardware store?" "Owned," Dad corrected gently. "Sold it last year. Semi-retired now." "How quaint," Diana smiled. "And Brooke, you work with computers?" "I'm a cybersecurity specialist," I explained. "I identify vulnerabilities in corporate networks and fix them before they can be exploited." "Like IT support?" Gregory asked, his tone suggesting he was dumbing it down for himself. "Not exactly," I began, but Diana had already turned to Julian's sister Miranda to discuss some charity gala. Throughout dinner, the divide became clearer. The Pierces lived in a different world, one where summer was a verb, where connections mattered more than competence, where family names opened doors my skills couldn't unlock. As we left, Harper hugged me tightly. "They'll warm up," she whispered. "They're just protective." I nodded, not wanting to dim her happiness. But driving home, Dad said what I was thinking. "Those people aren't like us, Brooke." "Does that matter?" I asked. He didn't answer. A week later, I discovered just how much it mattered. The call came on a Tuesday evening. I was at home, curled up on my couch with takeout and my laptop, running diagnostics on a client's system. When Dad's name flashed on my phone, I answered with a smile, expecting wedding updates. "Hey, Dad. What's up?" His voice was strained, hesitant. "Brooke, honey, we need to talk about Harper's wedding." Something in his tone made me set down my food. "What about it?" "I had a call from Robert Pierce today." He paused, and I heard him take a deep breath. They've finalized the guest list." "Okay." I waited, not understanding the problem. "Brooke, they don't want you at the wedding." The words hit like a physical blow. "What are you talking about?" "I'm the maid of honor." "Not anymore. They've asked Harper to choose someone else." "They? You mean Julian's parents?" "What does Harper say about this?" The silence that followed told me everything. "She agrees," I whispered, my voice breaking. "She says it's complicated. The Pierces are hosting at their estate, paying for everything. They have certain expectations." "Expectations that don't include the bride's only sister?" My shock was turning to anger. Dad sighed heavily. "They think you're too rough around the edges for their social circle. Harper says she'll make it up to you, maybe have a small celebration after." "After her wedding?" "The one I'm not good enough to attend." I was standing now, pacing my small apartment. "I'm so sorry, honey. I told Harper this was wrong, but she says there's too much at stake. Julian's family has connections that could help her career." "So she's trading her sister for a career boost?" The betrayal cut deep, stealing my breath. "Don't come to your sister's wedding. Her in-laws don't like you." The words replayed in my head, each repetition another stab. After hanging up with Dad, I immediately tried calling Harper. Straight to voicemail. I texted, * we need to talk. Now, * no response. I cycled through disbelief, hurt, and rage, finally calling my best friend Claire at midnight. "They can't do that," Claire said, outraged after I explained. "You're her sister. Apparently that means less than the Pierce family's social comfort." My voice was hollow. "Have you talked to Harper directly?" "She won't answer my calls or texts." Claire's voice softened. "Maybe your dad misunderstood?" But we both knew he hadn't. The next morning, I went to work in a daze. My colleagues noticed my distraction, but I blamed it on a complex security issue. During lunch, I finally received a text from Harper. Asterisk dad, shouldn't have told you like that. It's complicated. Can we talk next week? Asterisk. Next week. Like being excluded from her wedding was a minor scheduling conflict. I replied, asterisk, why now? Why not 2 months ago when the invitations went out? Asterisk. Her response came hours later. Asterisk, I was trying to change their minds. I'm sorry, Brooke. The Pierces are important people. Asterisk. And I wasn't important. Message received. That evening, I found myself doing something I'd never done before, stalking my own sister on social media. Harper had always been more active online than me, posting perfectly filtered photos of her life. Now I scrolled through recent posts, looking for clues. There it was, a photo from last weekend tagged wedding planning, showing Harper, Julian, Diana Pierce, and several elegant women I didn't recognize arranging flowers and place settings. The caption, final wedding preparations with my amazing future mother-in-law and bridesmaids. Bridesmaids. Plural. None of them me. Scrolling further, I found another post from 3 weeks ago, Harper trying on wedding dresses with the same group of women. She'd found her dress without me, her sister who had practically raised her after mom died. The final blow came when I checked the wedding planning website link in her bio. Entering the password, Harper's birthday, which I'd tried on a hunch. I accessed the full wedding details, including the guest list. I scrolled through names of people Harper had never mentioned, Pierce family connections and business associates. My name had been there once. I could see the deletion mark, but now there was nothing. I confronted Dad the next day, driving to his house unannounced. You knew about this for weeks, didn't you? I demanded as soon as he opened the door. His guilty expression confirmed it. I thought Harper would come to her senses. And when she didn't, you were just going to let me find out when the wedding photos appeared online. Brooke, please understand. Understand what? That my sister is ashamed of me? That you're okay with that? Dad looked defeated, slumping into his armchair. The Pierces, they're influential people. Harper says this marriage could set her up for life. So that's it? We just accept being looked down on because they have money. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices. No, Dad. We don't have to sacrifice our dignity for people who think we're beneath them. His next words broke something in me. Harper said you might react this way. She said you've always been jealous of her opportunities. The room seemed to tilt. Jealous? I worked 3 jobs to put her through school. I skipped college so she could go to law school. I know, honey. I know. His voice was tired, defeated. But Harper's making a life for herself. Maybe we should just be happy for her. I left his house in tears, driving aimlessly for hours. The sister I had protected, supported, and loved had not only excluded me from the most important day of her life, but had painted me as jealous and difficult to justify it. That night, alone in my apartment, I finally let myself break down. I sobbed until my throat was raw, clutching an old photo of Harper and me from high school graduation, her beaming in her cap and gown, me beside her, proud and protective. I promised Mom I'd always be there for you, I whispered to Harper's smiling face. But you don't want me there anymore. The hurt was consuming, but somewhere in the darkness, a different emotion began to take shape. If the Pierces thought I wasn't good enough, perhaps it was time they learned exactly who they were dealing with. After a week of unanswered texts and avoided calls, I threw myself into work with renewed intensity. My colleagues noticed the change, longer hours, fewer breaks, a sharp focus that bordered on obsession. You okay, Sanders? My supervisor Marcus asked after I stayed until midnight 3 days in a row. Just focused, I replied, not looking up from my screen. The truth was, work was the only thing keeping me from dwelling on Harper's betrayal. In cybersecurity, there were clear problems with definitive solutions. Unlike family, code didn't suddenly change its mind about whether you belonged. 2 weeks after Dad's devastating call, I was assigned to a new client audit. The name on the folder made my heart stop. Pierce Technologies. There must be some mistake, I told Marcus, handing back the folder. No mistake. They specifically requested our top specialists for their annual security audit. That's you. He looked pleased, unaware of the conflict. It's a big account, Brooke. Could mean a promotion if you handle it well. I wanted to refuse, to explain the personal connection, but something stopped me. Perhaps this was an opportunity to understand the world that had seduced my sister away from me. Fine. I'll take it. The initial work was standard, reviewing security protocols, checking network vulnerabilities, testing for weak points in their system. Pierce Technologies had a robust security infrastructure, as expected from a company that specialized in data management for financial institutions. But they weren't impenetrable. No system ever is. 3 days into the audit, I discovered an irregularity. A series of transactions small enough to avoid automatic flagging, but consistent enough to form a pattern when viewed together. Funds being moved between accounts, passing through multiple divisions before ending up in offshore holdings. It might have been legitimate business operations. But my instincts, honed by years of detecting patterns, said otherwise. I dug deeper, carefully documenting everything, staying late into the night when the office was empty. The more I looked, the more I found. Shell companies, falsified records, financial statements that didn't match actual holdings. Someone at Pierce Technologies was embezzling funds on a massive scale. The evidence pointed to one person, Gregory Pierce himself. According to the transactions I traced, Gregory had been siphoning company funds for years, hiding losses from shareholders and the board. Pierce Technologies, despite its prestigious reputation, was teetering on the edge of financial collapse. This discovery should have gone immediately to my supervisors. The ethical thing would be to report my findings through proper channels. But I hesitated, understanding the implications. If Gregory Pierce was exposed, the company would face a crisis. Stock would plummet, jobs would be lost, and Julian's family would be disgraced. I sat alone in my darkened office, staring at the damning evidence on my screen. Then my phone buzzed with a notification. Harper had posted a new photo. Her and Julian on a yacht with his parents, champagne glasses raised. The caption reading, "Pre-wedding celebration with the people who matter most." The people who matter most. The words burned. I continued my investigation with renewed purpose, discovering more than just financial fraud. Emails revealed the Pierce family's true financial situation. They were leveraged to the hilt, maintaining a facade of wealth while desperately seeking new investments. More surprisingly, I found correspondence between Gregory and Diana discussing Harper and Julian's relationship. They weren't just approving of the match, they were actively encouraging it. Harper's position at Preston and Marsh Law, which specialized in financial restructuring, was seen as a strategic alliance. Julia's fiancé's firm could help us navigate the SEC issues, Gregory had written. Once they're married, the connection will be secured. They weren't welcoming Harper into their family, they were acquiring her professional connections. I needed perspective, so I reached out to my old mentor Frank, being careful to keep details vague. If you discovered a client was committing fraud, but reporting it would hurt someone you care about, what would you do? I asked over coffee. Frank studied me carefully. The professional answer is clear, report it. The human answer is messier. He leaned forward. What's really going on, Brooke? I couldn't tell him everything, but I shared enough: a family conflict, a discovery at work, an ethical dilemma. Sometimes the right thing and the easy thing are different paths, he said finally. But remember, whatever you choose, you have to live with it. His words stayed with me as I continued gathering evidence, meticulously documenting everything in an encrypted folder. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about truth. I tried once more to reach Harper, sending a carefully worded text. I've learned some concerning things about Julian's family business. We need to talk before the wedding. Her reply came quickly this time, Stop trying to ruin this for me. I know you're jealous, but this is pathetic. Jealous. Again that word. The next day, I received a cease and desist letter from the Pierce family attorney warning against making defamatory statements regarding the Pierce family or Pierce Technologies. They had interpreted my text as a threat. That evening, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. When I opened it, I found myself face to face with Miranda Pierce, Julian's younger sister. "Can I come in?" she asked, glancing nervously over her shoulder. "I don't have much time." I hesitated, then stepped aside. Miranda had always seemed the quietest member of the Pierce family, observing more than participating. "My parents don't know I'm here," she said, perching awkwardly on my couch. "But I saw the lawyer drafting that letter to you, and I thought you should know some things." For the next hour, Miranda confirmed my worst suspicions. The Pierce family was not what they seemed. Their wealth was mostly illusion, maintained through creative accounting and strategic relationships. Gregory was desperate to maintain appearances, and Diana was obsessed with social standing. "They see Harper as an asset," Miranda explained. "Her firm has connections that could help bail out the company. And they don't like you because I can see through them," I finished. Miranda nodded. "You don't play the game. You're honest, and that scares them." She stood to leave. "I'm sorry about the wedding. It wasn't Harper's idea to exclude you. My parents insisted, and she's desperate for their approval." After Miranda left, I sat in silence, processing everything. Then I made a decision. I wouldn't report my findings, not yet, but I would create a backup plan. I spent the night setting up a secure system that would allow me to legally freeze Pierce Technologies' assets pending an investigation, if necessary. It wasn't illegal. It wasn't even unethical, given what I'd discovered. It was simply preparation. The next day, I arranged a meeting with Kenneth Lawson, Pierce Technologies' CFO. A nervous man with kind eyes, Kenneth had no idea about Gregory's embezzlement. I could tell by his genuine shock when I carefully broached the subject. "I've noticed some irregularities," I said vaguely. "Transactions that don't follow standard protocols." Kenneth looked confused. "Everything goes through proper channels. Mr. Pierce personally approves all major financial movements." "That's the problem," I said gently. By the end of our conversation, Kenneth understood the gravity of the situation. He didn't commit to any action, but thanked me for my discretion. I left him my contact information, including my personal cell. "If you decide this needs further attention," I told him, "call me first." As I gathered my things to leave, Kenneth asked quietly, "Why are you telling me this instead of going to the authorities?" I thought about Harper, about family loyalty, about the complex web of hurt and love that bound us. Because sometimes people deserve a chance to make things right on their own. 3 weeks before the wedding, I made one last attempt to warn Harper. Not about the Pierce family's financial fraud, that would violate client confidentiality, but about their intentions. "Harper, please meet me for coffee," I texted. "Just 20 minutes. To my surprise, she agreed. We met at a neutral location, a busy cafe downtown. Harper arrived looking immaculate but tired, designer sunglasses hiding her eyes even indoors. "Make it quick," she said, sliding into the booth. "I have a dress fitting at 11. The coldness in her voice hurt, but I pressed on. "I'm worried about you, Harper. The Pierces aren't who they pretend to be." She sighed dramatically. "Is that why you wanted to meet?" "To badmouth Julian's family again." "They're using you," I said bluntly. "They want your law firm connections to help their business." Harper's expression hardened. "You mean they recognize my professional value? Unlike some people who just see me as their little sister forever." "That's not fair. I've always supported your career. By constantly reminding me how you sacrificed for me, by making me feel guilty for every opportunity." Her voice rose slightly. "The Pierces see my potential. They're helping me network, build connections." "While excluding your family from your wedding?" Harper removed her sunglasses, revealing reddened eyes. "That's complicated. Their social circle has certain expectations." They're ashamed of us, I interrupted. Of our background. Maybe I am too, she snapped, then immediately looked horrified. I didn't mean that. But she had, and we both knew it. Harper, I said quietly, do you even want me at your wedding? She hesitated a moment too long. Of course I do, but there's your answer. I stood up, fighting back tears. I hope Julian and his family give you everything you're looking for. I walked out, ignoring her calls to come back. That evening, I received the cease and desist letter from the Pierce family attorney, along with a warning about interfering in Harper and Julian's relationship. The letter referred to malicious attempts to damage the Pierce family reputation with baseless accusations. They were framing me as a jealous, vindictive sister trying to ruin Harper's happiness. I called Dad, hoping for support, but his response left me cold. Maybe it's best to let this go, Brooke, he suggested. Harper's made her choice. Her choice to cut me out of her life for people who look down on us? Dad sighed. I don't like it either, but fighting it will only make things worse. Let's just get through the wedding and then maybe. You're still going? I couldn't believe it. She's my daughter too, Brooke. I hung up, feeling more alone than ever. My own father was choosing peace over principle. He would sit in that church, smile for photos, pretend it was okay that his older daughter had been deemed unworthy of attending. That night, Miranda Pierce called me. I need to see you, she said, her voice hushed. My father's furious about your meeting with Harper. We met in a park the next day, sitting on a bench far from other visitors. They've convinced Harper you're trying to sabotage her relationship out of jealousy, Miranda explained. Julian knows it's wrong, but he won't stand up to my parents. They control his trust fund, his position in the company. What about you? I asked. Why are you telling me this? Miranda stared at her hands. Because I've spent my whole life watching them manipulate people. What they're doing to you and your family, it's what they do to everyone. Use people, then discard them when they're no longer useful. She handed me an envelope. Wedding invitation. I took it from my mother's desk. It's not much, but at least you'll know the details. I accepted it numbly. Thank you. Don't thank me, Miranda said, standing to leave. I'm still too cowardly to do anything that actually matters. The invitation confirmed what I already knew. The ceremony would be held at the Pierce estate, followed by a reception for 300 guests. No, +1 for my father, and of course, no invitation for me. That evening, I began planning in earnest. Not revenge, exactly, but a contingency. I created multiple backups of the evidence I'd gathered about Pierce Technologies' financial fraud. I drafted a detailed report for the SEC, ready to send if necessary. I set up the system that would allow me to legally freeze the company's assets pending investigation. Every step was carefully documented, every action within the bounds of the law. I wasn't planning to destroy Gregory Pierce, just to be ready if the situation demanded action. What are you really trying to accomplish? Claire asked when I explained my preparations, keeping the details vague for legal reasons. I'm not sure, I admitted. Justice? Recognition? Maybe I just want them to acknowledge that I matter. And Harper? What do you want from her? The question caught me off guard. What did I want from my sister? I want her to choose me, I said finally, the truth of it aching in my chest. Just once, I want to be the one who matters most. The week before the wedding, Kenneth Lawson called me. I've been looking into those irregularities you mentioned, he said, his voice tight. You were right. But Mr. Pierce has covered his tracks well. The board won't act without irrefutable evidence. I have that evidence, I told him. Then why haven't you used it? I thought about Harper, about the wedding, about family loyalty stretched to breaking point. I'm giving someone a chance to do the right thing first. 2 days before the wedding, I received a text from an unknown number. Harper misses you. She's too proud to admit it. Julian. I stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Was it a trap? A genuine olive branch? Before I could decide, another text arrived, this one from my father. They sent an invitation for you. Last minute, but it's something. The envelope arrived by courier that afternoon. Inside was an invitation to Harper and Julian's wedding, with a handwritten note from Diana Pierce. We may have gotten off on the wrong foot. Harper would be pleased if you could attend. No +1. No apology. No acknowledgement of the hurt they'd caused. Just a conditional invitation that felt more like a concession than a welcome. I placed it on my kitchen counter and stared at it for hours, weighing my options. In the end, the decision wasn't about the Pierces or even Harper. It was about me, about whether I could walk into that wedding with my head held high, knowing I'd been an afterthought. The morning of the wedding, I made my choice. I would go. Not for the Pierces, not even for Harper, but for myself. I would look Gregory and Diana Pierce in the eyes, knowing what I knew about them. I would stand in their mansion, the sister they had deemed unworthy, and I would not be ashamed. I dressed carefully in a simple but elegant navy dress, applied minimal makeup, and drove to the Pierce estate with my laptop bag beside me on the passenger seat. Inside was everything I needed: evidence of fraud, the system to freeze assets, years of financial crimes documented meticulously. I didn't plan to use it, but I was prepared, just in case. As I pulled up to the mansion, I took a deep breath and reminded myself, they may have the money, but I have the truth. The Pierce estate was transformed for the wedding, white roses cascading from wrought iron arches, crystal chandeliers hanging from trees, champagne flowing from fountains that probably cost more than my annual salary. A small army of staff directed guests to their seats, all facing an elaborate floral altar overlooking the manicured gardens. I arrived deliberately late, slipping into the back row just as the string quartet began playing. My father spotted me from his front row seat, his relief visible even from a distance. I gave him a small nod, but stayed where I was. The ceremony was exactly what you'd expect from a family like the Pierces: extravagant, formal, designed to impress rather than express. Julian stood at the altar, handsome in a tailored tuxedo, flanked by groomsmen who all had that same polished, privileged look. Then the music changed and Harper appeared. My breath caught. My little sister was radiant in a designer gown that floated around her like a cloud, her smile bright as she clutched our father's arm. For a moment, she was just Harper again, the girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who cried when I left for my first apartment, who once said I was her hero. As she passed my row, our eyes met briefly. Something flickered across her face: surprise, relief, regret? But then she looked away, focusing on Julian waiting ahead. During the ceremony, I observed the Pierce family more than the couple. Gregory sat rigidly in the front row, checking his phone discreetly. Diana dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief, her performance of maternal emotion flawless. Miranda, seated beside them, looked genuinely moved, occasionally glancing back at me with a mix of surprise and respect. After Harper and Julian exchanged vows, guests were directed to the garden for cocktails while the wedding party took photos. I stayed on the periphery, watching as Harper posed with her new in-laws, her bridesmaids, women I'd never met who now occupied the space that should have been mine. "Didn't expect to see you here," a voice said behind me. I turned to find Gregory Pierce, champagne in hand, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Last-minute invitation," I replied coolly. "I almost didn't come." Harper can be persuasive when she wants something. His tone suggested it had been her idea, not his. Though between us, I think the family differences would have made your inclusion awkward. Family differences? He sipped his champagne, eyes scanning the crowd rather than meeting mine. You know what I mean. Different backgrounds, different social circles. Nothing wrong with that, of course, but weddings are about unity. Compatibility. And you didn't find me compatible with your image. His laugh was practiced, hollow. You're very direct, aren't you? That's refreshing, in its way. But not always appropriate in certain settings. Before I could respond, he was joined by several men in expensive suits, business associates, judging by their conversation. I heard Gregory introducing Julian as the future of Pierce Technologies and boasting about expansion plans I knew were impossible given the company's actual financial state. The new government contracts alone will double our valuation by next quarter, he claimed, the lie rolling easily off his tongue. One of the men noticed me listening. "And who is this lovely young lady?" Gregory's smile tightened. "No one important. Just the bride's sister. Just the bride's sister." For words that crystallized everything. I excused myself, moving through the crowd toward the house. I needed air, space to think. Inside, the mansion was quieter, most guests still enjoying cocktails in the garden. I found myself in a hallway lined with Pierce family photos, generations of privilege captured in gilded frames. That's when I overheard Gregory Pierce's voice from a nearby room, the door slightly ajar. "Of course she showed up," he was saying. "Probably hoping to network with our guests. You know how these ambitious, self-made types are." A woman laughed. "Diana. Did you see her dress? Off the rack, obviously. The Sanders family should be grateful Julian saw something in Harper. With her connections at the law firm and our business acumen, we'll have those SEC issues resolved by year-end. The marriage is a smart strategic alliance. If only we didn't have to include her family in the package deal. That sister especially, no polish, no connections, just attitude." Their laughter burned in my ears. All this time, I thought they'd excluded me because I wasn't good enough. The truth was worse. They saw Harper as an acquisition, not a daughter-in-law. And me? I was just unnecessary baggage. I was about to walk away when I heard Julian's voice joining them. "Mom, Dad, the photographer is waiting. And have you seen Brooke? Harper's asking for her." "Why?" Diana sounded genuinely confused. "She's not in the wedding party." "Because she's her sister," Julian said, his tone sharper than I'd ever heard it. "And this charade has gone far enough." "Julian," Gregory's voice lowered warningly, "remember who funds your lifestyle." "And remember whose wedding this is," Julian countered. "I've gone along with everything else, but this is too far. Harper's miserable without her sister." I backed away silently, processing this new information. Had Harper actually wanted me here? Had Julian stood up for me? Finding a quiet bathroom, I locked myself inside and tried to steady my breathing. The conversation replayed in my mind, each word sharpening my resolve. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Harper too. The Pierces were using us both. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. "Brooke?" It was Harper's voice. "Are you in there?" "Someone said they saw you come this way." I opened the door to find my sister, looking breathtaking in her wedding gown, eyes anxious. "You came," she said, as if she couldn't quite believe it. "Last-minute invitation," I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. Harper glanced around, then pulled me inside the bathroom, closing the door behind us. In the confined space, she suddenly looked very young, reminding me of the 12-year-old girl I'd comforted after Mom's funeral. "I'm so sorry, Brooke," she whispered, eyes filling with tears. "I never wanted to exclude you. The Pierces insisted, and Julian's future in the company depends on his parents' approval, and my firm has been pushing me to strengthen client relationships, and it all got so complicated." "Complicated enough to cut out the sister who helped raise you?" The words came out sharper than intended. Harper flinched. I was weak. I told myself it was just one day, that it was a necessary sacrifice for our future. She looked down at her elaborate dress. But standing up there, saying my vows, all I could think was that you weren't beside me where you should be. For a moment, I saw the Harper I remembered, vulnerable, sincere, my little sister again. But then I remembered Gregory's words, a smart strategic alliance. "Harper," I said carefully, "do you know what the Pierces really want from this marriage?" She wiped at her tears, careful not to smudge her makeup. "What do you mean?" "They're using your connections at the law firm to help with their company's legal issues. That's why they pushed for this wedding." Harper's expression shifted from confusion to hurt to something harder. Did Dad tell you that? Or are you just trying to ruin this day for me? I heard Gregory and Diana discussing it themselves, just now. So you're eavesdropping on my in-laws at my wedding? Her voice rose. God, Brooke, why can't you just be happy for me? The Pierces are important people. More important than your family? Than me. That's not fair. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices. No, Harper. We don't have to sacrifice our dignity for people who think we're beneath them. I echoed the words I'd said to our father weeks ago. Harper's face hardened. You've always been like this, so proud, so rigid. Maybe if you learn to adapt, to fit in, to pretend to be something I'm not, to let people like the Pierces determine my worth. We stared at each other, years of unspoken tensions surfacing in one painful moment. I have to get back, Harper said finally. They're cutting the cake soon. Of course. Your in-laws are waiting. As Harper reached for the door, I said quietly, do you know that Pierce Technologies is failing? That Gregory has been embezzling funds for years. She froze, her back to me. What are you talking about? Ask Julian if his family's wealth is as secure as they pretend. Ask him about the SEC investigation they're trying to avoid. Harper turned, her expression a mix of anger and uncertainty. Stop it. Just stop trying to ruin this for me. I'm trying to protect you. I don't need your protection anymore. The words echoed in the small space. I made my choice, Brooke. I chose this life, these people. If you can't accept that, then maybe Dad was right about not inviting you. She left, the door closing firmly behind her. I stood motionless, her words ringing in my ears. After everything, the years of sacrifice, the love, the support, this was her choice. I gathered my composure and left the bathroom, making my way through the mansion toward the exit. As I passed the library, I noticed it was empty, a laptop sitting open on the desk. Without thinking, I slipped inside and closed the door. It was time. I took my own laptop from my bag and connected to the estate's Wi-Fi network, using the password I'd spotted on a card near the catering station. Within minutes, I had accessed the secure system I'd created, the one that documented all of Gregory Pierce's financial crimes. My finger hovered over the key that would activate the protocol, freezing Pierce Technologies' assets pending investigation, sending evidence to the SEC, alerting the company board. One keystroke that would bring the Pierce empire crashing down during Harper's wedding reception. Through the window, I could see the celebration continuing, Harper and Julian cutting a towering cake, Gregory making a toast, guests applauding. A perfect scene from a perfect day, built on lies and manipulation. I thought about Harper's words. I made my choice. And now I was making mine. I pressed the key. For a moment, nothing happened. Then I saw Gregory Pierce reach for his phone, frowning at the screen. He excused himself from the table, walking quickly toward the house. Other phones began buzzing. Men in suits huddled in conversation, expressions serious. I closed my laptop, put it back in my bag, and walked calmly out of the library. In the hallway, I passed Gregory Pierce rushing toward his office, his face ashen. He didn't even notice me. Outside, I walked to my car, got in, and drove away from the Pierce estate. In my rearview mirror, I could see confusion spreading through the reception as more phones chimed with alerts, more guests whispered urgently to each other. I'd done it. With one keystroke, I'd exposed the truth behind the Pierce family facade. Not for revenge, but for justice. Not to hurt Harper, but to free her from a family that saw her as nothing more than a strategic alliance. As I drove home, I felt no satisfaction, no vindication, only a quiet certainty that I had done what needed to be done. The Pierce family had thought I wasn't important enough to attend their perfect wedding. Now they would learn exactly how important I could be. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. By the time I reached my apartment, my phone was exploding with notifications. Breaking news alerts announced that Pierce Technologies' assets had been frozen pending a major fraud investigation. The company's stock was in free fall. Financial news channels were running special reports on the tech dynasty's sudden crisis. I turned off my phone and went to bed, emotionally exhausted. Whatever came next would wait until morning. I woke to 27 missed calls from Harper, Julian, my father, unknown numbers, and finally, Kenneth Lawson, the CFO. "The board has called an emergency meeting," he said when I returned his call. "They want you there." "Me? Why?" "Because you're the one who uncovered the fraud and apparently the only one with the complete evidence. The SEC is involved now. This is bigger than anyone imagined." I agreed to attend, then called my father. His voice was tight with shock and confusion. "Did you know about this?" He asked immediately. "About what, Dad?" "Don't play dumb, Brooke. Pierce Technologies. The fraud investigation. It happened during the wedding reception." "I may have discovered some irregularities during my security audit," I said carefully. His sharp intake of breath told me he understood. "Harper is devastated." The reception fell apart. Julian's parents left in the middle of it. "I'm sorry it affected her day," I said and meant it. Despite everything, I hadn't wanted to hurt Harper. "She's been trying to reach you all night." "I'll call her," I promised, though the thought filled me with dread. Before I could, however, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, I found Gregory and Diana Pierce standing in my hallway, looking like they'd aged a decade overnight. "May we come in?" Gregory asked, his usual commanding tone replaced by something almost pleading. I stepped aside, allowing them into my modest apartment. Diana glanced around with barely concealed disdain, despite the circumstances. "We know what you did," Gregory said once we were seated, him and Diana on my small couch, me in the armchair opposite. "I did my job," I replied evenly. "I found security vulnerabilities and financial irregularities during a standard audit." "And you chose to report them during our daughter's wedding reception?" Diana's voice dripped with accusation. "Your son's wedding," I corrected. "And I reported them when I had conclusive evidence." The timing was unfortunate. Gregory leaned forward, his expression calculating despite his obvious distress. "What will it take to fix this?" "Fix it? To make this go away." "Name your price." I almost laughed. Even now, facing ruin, Gregory Pierce thought everything could be bought. It doesn't work that way. The evidence has been submitted to the SEC and the company board. I don't control what happens next. You little. Diana began, but Gregory silenced her with a gesture. "Let's be reasonable," he said, forcing a smile. "We all want what's best for Harper and Julian. This scandal will hurt them too." "You should have thought of that before you committed fraud," I replied. "Before you used Harper's connections to try to save your failing company. Before you decided my sister was valuable but I wasn't worth inviting to her wedding." Diana's face flushed. "So this is personal. Revenge for a perceived slight." "No," I said firmly. "This is professional. I found criminal activity and reported it, as I'm legally obligated to do. The fact that you're horrible people is coincidental." The doorbell rang again. This time it was Julian and Harper, both looking exhausted, Harper's eyes red from crying. "What are you doing here?" Harper asked her in-laws, clearly surprised to find them in my apartment. "Trying to reason with your sister," Gregory began, but Julian cut him off. "Stop, Dad. Just stop." Julian's voice was tired but determined. "It's over. The board has seen the evidence. They're cooperating with the SEC." "What evidence?" Harper looked confused. "Julian, what's happening?" Julian took her hand gently. "My father has been embezzling from the company for years. Pierce Technologies is essentially bankrupt. They've been maintaining the illusion of success through creative accounting and, apparently, by pushing for our marriage to gain connections to your law firm." Harper's eyes widened as she turned to Gregory and Diana. "Is this true?" Their silence was answer enough. So everything, the rush to get married, insisting on handling all the arrangements, the guest list restrictions, it was all about business? Harper's voice broke. Not everything, Diana protested weakly. Julian loves you. But you pushed for this wedding because of my firm's connections, Harper pressed. You excluded my sister because she might see through your facade. Again, their silence confirmed it. Harper turned to me, her expression a storm of emotions. You knew? That's what you were trying to tell me. I nodded. I found out during the security audit. I couldn't tell you the details because of confidentiality, but I tried to warn you. And I wouldn't listen. Tears filled her eyes. I chose them over you. The room fell silent, the weight of everything hanging between us. Finally, Gregory stood. This isn't over, he said, but the threat sounded hollow. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Actually, I replied calmly, I know exactly who I'm dealing with. That's the problem. After they left, Harper collapsed onto the couch, Julian beside her, his arm around her shoulders. I'm so sorry, Brooke, she whispered. I've been awful to you. You were manipulated, I said, though the hurt wasn't so easily dismissed. They saw an opportunity and exploited it. Julian looked at me directly. For what it's worth, I had no idea about my father's business practices. I knew they were pushing for the marriage, but I thought it was because they liked Harper. He paused. And I do love her. That part was never fake. I studied him, seeing real pain in his eyes. Perhaps Julian was as much a victim of his parents' manipulation as Harper had been. What happens now? Harper asked, looking between Julian and me. The board meeting is tomorrow, I explained. They'll want my evidence, testimony from key executives. The SEC investigation will take time. And Pierce Technologies? Julian asked. That depends on how widespread the fraud was, how many people were involved. Best case, the company survives under new management. Worst case. Julian nodded, understanding the unspoken possibility that his family's company might not recover. What about us? Harper's question was directed at me, not Julian. Can you ever forgive me? I looked at my sister. My little sister who I'd practically raised, who I'd sacrificed for, who had hurt me deeply but who was still, always, my family. It'll take time, I said honestly. But we'll figure it out. The next morning, I attended the Pierce Technologies board meeting, presenting my evidence methodically and answering questions with professional detachment. Gregory Pierce sat at the far end of the table, silent and diminished, his lawyer whispering urgently in his ear. Kenneth Lawson and other executives looked shell-shocked, processing the revelation that their prestigious company had been built on financial deception. By the meeting's end, several things were clear. Gregory Pierce would be removed as CEO, assets would remain frozen during the investigation, and a complete restructuring would be necessary if the company was to survive. As I gathered my materials to leave, Gregory approached me, his lawyer hovering anxiously nearby. You've destroyed everything I built, he said, voice low. You destroyed it yourself, I corrected. I just exposed the truth. What do you want from me? He asked, a desperate edge to his voice. An apology? Money? What? I looked at the man who had deemed me unworthy of attending my own sister's wedding, who had manipulated Harper, who had built his reputation on lies. I don't want your money, I said simply. I want your respect. And walking out of that boardroom, knowing I had stood my ground and exposed the truth despite everything, I finally felt like I had earned it. 6 months later, Pierce Technologies was unrecognizable. The company had survived, barely, through a complete restructuring. Gregory Pierce had been indicted on multiple counts of financial fraud and was under house arrest pending trial. Diana Pierce had retreated from public life, their mansion sold to cover legal fees and restitution. Julian, somewhat surprisingly, had stepped up to help save the company, working alongside the new management team to rebuild what his father had nearly destroyed. As for Harper and me, we were slowly, cautiously rebuilding our relationship. The wedding day disaster had forced difficult conversations that were long overdue. I never thanked you properly, Harper said one evening as we sat in my apartment. sharing takeout and wine. For everything you did for me growing up. I shrugged, uncomfortable with her gratitude. You're my sister. That's what family does. No, not everyone would have sacrificed what you did. She set down her glass. After Mom died, you became my parent, my protector, my guide. You put me through college while working multiple jobs. You gave up your own dreams so I could pursue mine. Harper, let me finish, she insisted. When I met Julian and his family, I got caught up in their world, the money, the connections, the status. They made me feel special, chosen. She looked down. And somewhere along the way, I started seeing you as a reminder of where I came from, not as the person who got me where I am. The admission hurt, but the honesty behind it was healing. I understand, I said. The Pierces offered something attractive, a whole different world. A fake world, Harper corrected. Built on lies and manipulation. She reached for my hand. I chose the wrong family, Brooke. I'm so sorry. Forgiveness didn't come easily. The hurt was deep, the betrayal profound. But Harper was persistent, showing up weekly with coffee, calling regularly, slowly earning back my trust. And I found that I wanted to forgive her, wanted my sister back in my life. Julian was part of our reconciliation too, surprisingly. Unlike his parents, he had faced the truth head-on, cooperating fully with investigators and working to make amends. He'd been raised in privilege and deception, but was choosing a different path. Today marked a milestone, our first family dinner since the wedding. Dad was hosting at his house, a neutral territory for all of us. I arrived early to help him prepare, finding him nervously checking his casserole in the oven. You think this is a good idea? He asked as I set the table. Having everyone together? It's time, I said simply. Dad had his own apologies to make, and I'd been less forgiving with him than with Harper. He had chosen the path of least resistance, allowing the Pierces to exclude me rather than standing firm. I should have fought harder for you, he'd admitted during one difficult conversation. I was so afraid of losing Harper that I let them dictate terms. I failed you. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. Harper and Julian arrived together, looking more relaxed than I'd seen them in months. Julian carried a bottle of wine, Harper a homemade pie, Mom's recipe. Dinner was awkward at first, conversation stilted as we carefully avoided sensitive topics. But gradually, the familiar comfort of family took over. Dad told embarrassing stories from our childhood. Harper laughed at my terrible impression of our 8th grade math teacher. Julian shared updates on the company's recovery, his commitment to rebuilding it ethically evident in his voice. Miranda's doing well, he mentioned, referring to his sister who had warned me about her family. She's in Europe, studying art. Away from our parents' influence for the first time. Good for her, I said sincerely. After dinner, while Dad and Julian cleaned up, Harper followed me onto the back porch. We sat on the steps, gazing at the small backyard where we'd played as children. Do you remember when Mom used to hang sheets on the clothesline and we'd run through them pretending they were magical portals? Harper asked. I smiled at the memory. You always wanted to be a princess in another world. And you were always the knight protecting me. She turned to face me. You're still protecting me, even when I didn't deserve it. That's not true. Everyone deserves protection from people like the Pierces. Harper was quiet for a moment. Julian asked me if I wanted to postpone the divorce until after his father's trial. This was news. What did you say? I said no. She twisted her wedding ring, which she now wore on her right hand. We're separated, but I don't know. He's different now, away from his parents' influence. We're seeing a counselor. Do you still love him? I think so. Her expression was thoughtful. But I need to figure out who I am first, without the Pierces defining me, without using my relationship with you as a measuring stick for my own worth. I understood that journey all too well. Inside, we could hear Dad and Julian laughing about something. The sound was healing, normal family interaction, replacing the tension that had dominated our relationships for too long. What about you? Harper asked. RST Security offered you that promotion, right? I nodded. Security director. Better pay, more responsibility. You deserve it. You're brilliant at what you do. Thanks, I said, genuinely touched by her support. We sat in comfortable silence, the evening air cool around us. Finally, Harper spoke again, her voice soft. Do you think we'll ever get back to where we were? Before all this. I considered the question carefully. No, I said honestly. We can't go back. But maybe we can build something new, something better. Something based on truth this time. Harper nodded, tears in her eyes, but a small smile on her lips. I'd like that. Later, as Julian and Harper prepared to leave, Julian pulled me aside. Thank you, he said simply. For exposing the truth, yes, but more for giving me a chance to prove I'm not my father. You're doing that every day, I acknowledged. The new Pierce Technologies is building a solid reputation. That's business, he waved dismissively. I meant thank you for giving me a chance with your family. With Harper. I know I don't deserve it after what happened. I studied him thoughtfully. Everyone deserves a second chance, Julian. It's what you do with it that matters. After they left, Dad and I sat in his living room, the house quiet again. He looked older, the events of the past year having taken their toll, but there was peace in his expression I hadn't seen in a long time. I'm proud of you, Brooke, he said suddenly. Your mother would be too. The words washed over me, healing a wound I hadn't realized was still so raw. Thanks, Dad. You stood up for what was right even when it cost you. That's real strength. He squeezed my hand. I'm trying to learn from your example. As I drove home that night, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The pain of exclusion, the vindication of truth, the slow rebuilding of trust and family bonds. None of it had been easy, but all of it had been necessary. The Pierces had thought I wasn't important enough to attend their perfect wedding. They had dismissed me as irrelevant, unworthy of their social circle. In doing so, they had failed to recognize the most fundamental truth. Real power doesn't come from wealth or status or social connections. It comes from integrity, from standing firm in your worth even when others try to diminish it. I had lost an invitation to a wedding, but I had gained something far more valuable. Self-respect, and eventually, the respect of those who mattered most. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to force your way into rooms that don't welcome you. It's to know your own worth so completely that no one else's validation matters, and to hold firm to that knowledge even when it would be easier to compromise. What about you? Have you ever had to stand up to people who underestimated your worth? How did you handle it? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your stories of standing your ground. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more. I'll be sharing another experience next week about navigating difficult family dynamics. Thank you for listening, and remember, never let anyone else determine your value.